Welcome, everybody. My name is Doug Carlson. I am the CEO of the National Utility Contractors Association, NUCA, and it is my pleasure to welcome everybody to our virtual summit. NUCA is the leading association working solely for the utility construction and excavation industry in the United States. Founded in 1964, NUCA has a nationwide network of state and regional chapters and member companies representing utility contractors, excavators, suppliers, and manufacturers, and other providers in the water, sewer, gas, electric, telecommunications, and excavation industries. Today, our panel discussion is focusing on infrastructure and broadband development. With me today is Tom Butler from Burgess Civil, Dan Buckley with Garney Construction, Eben Wyman with Wyman Associates, as well as Zach Perconti with Wyman Associates, who will serve as our moderator. And I'll turn it over to Zach.
Thanks, Doug. So utility construction generally supports federal funding programs such as the FCC's Universal Service Fund and the Connect America Fund. But in the past, the agency's goals to achieve high-speed broadband have not been nearly aggressive enough to meet the growing demand. So like other utility construction, contractors offer the true perspective of what works and what doesn't. Can you discuss the need for fiber optic infrastructure over other materials?
Oh, absolutely. First off, we're all well aware of the fact that getting broadband out across the United States has been an issue for a number of years. But now we're being taxed on the speeds and the delivery of our broadband system on that system that has already been implemented over the past 25 to 30 years. So to utilize copper per se in our broadband system, is going to be a slower form of technology. We need to utilize more fiber optic broadband systems to increase the speeds, to increase our target speeds that are required to secure better uploads and downloads of information that we're all experiencing, for example, through this COVID epidemic that we're suffering through right now. If we're not going to utilize the best technology that we need for a system like this, we're basically wasting money. The infrastructure for IT has been far exceeding the expectations of anybody over the past 15 years. And if you want to go back, you can even go back the last 5 years, we are exponentially increasing our speeds and need for information through the broadband network. So if we don't start utilizing the top of the line fiber optic materials that are needed for this broadband speed, we're doing a disservice to not just every homeowner or every business out there that's utilizing this for up speeds and down speeds. We're providing a huge disservice to our economy and the nation as a whole.
True, and all the telemeetings and conferences that have had to occur over the past several months have just proven the benefit and effectiveness of these types of meetings, and it allows us to operate our businesses in some ways quicker, better, and so on. And to still have the copper wire in the ground, where it's not going to facilitate the future of business.
And I would add that some of this might take oversight to make sure that federal dollars that are allocated to carriers, to make sure that carriers are doing the right thing to put fiber optic in the ground and not patch over copper systems. The ironic thing, I suppose, is that here we are, the contractors pushing for oversight, when we're the ones, or the contractors are the ones, they're going to get the work if you have to patch over copper in the next 5 years. So it's like we're saying is do the job right the first time, make the most bang for the taxpayer buck, and let's move on. There's going to be lots of work. If you want telemedicine, homeschooling, smart cars, we're going to need more broadband, and that's going to take, if you want to get that out there, it's going to take fiber optic.
You know, it's funny you mentioned that, Evan, because traditionally, if you want to think back, we always heard about, download speeds, and the carriers would definitely sell you on download speeds. Well, I have just as much need for upload as I do download, if not more so. So I think, as was mentioned earlier by Tom, with the pandemic, we were basically being pushed to move faster with this technology because we're being forced to use upload speeds just as much as download speeds. So if we don't grab onto it and embrace it, and we stick with the same, I don't know, it's kind of like running a Lamborghini with a Model T Ford set of tires. You know, it's just, you're not going to get the performance out of it that you could. Put some real tires on that Lamborghini and take those Model Ts off.
That is very well said. Better than I would say it. I guess all I'd add to that is high-speed broadband is no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. We don't need it. We don't want it. We need it.
Great.
So
Okay.
You're right. Absolutely right, Dan.
So on that topic, as an organization that is trying to maximize the use of federal dollars to the best for the industry and for our communities that we live in, how can the federal agencies such as the FCC ensure that broadband carriers are doing the right thing so that we get the most out of the taxpayers' dollars?
I think we need to increase the target speeds that are required to secure federal dollars when deploying broadband. Right now we have a 25 download, 3 upload. That's megabits per second. That's the standard, and that's just not going to be appropriate anymore. We really need to push for 100 up, 100 down, and that's going to future-proof the system as best as possible with the technology that we have right now. I mean, surely everybody that's watching this has been on a Zoom meeting and watched one of the screens freeze up and you can't hear the speaker for a second or two. And that's perfect evidence of the need to increase the upload speed as well as the download speed. But the upload speed is significantly lacking right now, relatively speaking.
And I just add again that when it comes to it, we might need some federal oversight to make sure that the carriers are doing the right thing to ensure those speeds are done, are met. Another problem is with mapping, and Congress and the FCC, and frankly now the industry, are doing what they can to clean up their maps to find out exactly what speeds are in different are in the different areas of the country. But right now the maps are kind of messed up, so that should be part of the equation.
Yeah, I can't speak enough about the issue with having mapping and knowing where the lines are and having the safety that's needed for our contractors, that when we're out there excavating, know where a certain line is and cutting off someone's communication or cutting off someone's power or water. I mean, that goes hand in hand with our business. So you would think that it would go hand in hand with an owner's business. Those lines that are out there and the maps that are provided for us, those maps are showing actually assets of those companies. And basically what we're asking those companies to do is to know where your assets are. You know where your truck fleet is. Why don't you know where your conduit is?
Yeah, we want them to identify the choke points in the system and make sure that those are the areas of focus for them, not necessarily the things that are going to the places that will be most profitable for them to put fiber optic in the ground, but the places that are best going to facilitate use for everybody, and that's getting rid of choke points first and foremost.
That's right.
Which would be getting rid of copper.
So basically, it also becomes a safety issue, making sure that we have the right speeds and the right broadband maps, so that we make sure that all the hospitals, and first call centers, ambulances, and fire departments are all there keyed in to having the right broadband applicable to what the needs are. That's instantaneous as far as first responders, the military, our police forces, anything like that. It always amazes me that Domino's can get somewhere in 15 minutes, but it takes our first responders longer because they don't actually have the right tools at their fingertips. So let's get them the right tools at their fingertips.
And Dan, maybe at a distant second would be schools. Absolutely. I mean, kids go home with an iPad that are provided to them, but they can't get any internet and they can't do their homework. I mean, what are they supposed to do?
Yeah, no connection. I mean, we've all seen the recent stories of the mother who had her children out in front of a CVS store or something like that because they had free broadband, and she didn't have access to it anywhere else. And that private business had decent broadband, but her neighborhood did not. So, I mean, these are the kind of things that we need to make sure that we have the oversight for to make sure that the money is being utilized in the right way.
Well, yeah, and by the schools giving the kids, say, the iPads or the laptops or whatever, providing that for the kids so that they can study, that would be like giving them a car that ran on a fuel that wasn't made. If the broadband can't allow the computer that they take home to operate properly, then you just sold me a car that runs on a fuel that doesn't exist. It's not helping me.
Spot on.
So one hot topic in the broadband construction industry is the need for improvements to the Universal Service Fund. What exactly are the problems with the USF, and how can these problems be addressed?
I'll be very quick on this one. The Universal Service Fund was established to fund broadband projects in unserved and underserved areas, basically rural America. It was funded by all carriers except for broadband. So the reform needed is to codify broadband as universal service, meaning that broadband providers pay into that fund, and all of a sudden you will see a lot more projects coming out from broadband providers because the single source telcos are going away. Cables, we'll see how it's going to go, but broadband is kind of the way we are going in the future. And if we can codify that into the law and make the broadband guys pay into it, I think you'll have a sustainable source of funding for broadband projects in the future.
So basically, Evan, you're saying that we need to expand the current base that contributes to USF.
Right. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and as a personal note for myself, I'm in the process of moving, and the new place I'm going to, the only service that's going to be coming into my place is internet, broadband. That's it. I'm not getting a hardwired phone. I'm not getting cable because the broadband gives me everything I need, and I can be much more selective in what I sign up for and get exactly what I want out of it.
And so if we have a bigger base to stabilize this for USF for the long term, then the FCC will have the flexibility to raise the revenue needed to meet the growing demand to deliver that broadband to all Americans. Okay.
Exactly right. That's right.
Great. So in all of our conversations, we're talking about a lot of infrastructure. We're talking about a lot of construction that is needed to sustain this important issue of broadband construction. So we know the importance of damage prevention in any utility construction project. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on how important damage prevention is, especially in dealing with broadband?
I'm going to let the contractors do this one.
Well, I mean, we mentioned first responders earlier. How important is it for our first responders to get connection when a contractor is out in the middle of the street, cuts a line that he didn't know was there, was unmarked, and now nobody can get a hold of the fire department? I mean, you come down and you say, well, how important is it? You got to say to yourself, well, how important is life itself? Because the connectivity between broadband and first responders is imminent. It needs to be there, as it does with. I mean, I work and play in the Washington, D.C. neck of the woods, and to not have access to broadband in that city is death itself. You can't function as a business. You can't function as a government. You can't function with our first responders' needs. You can't. I mean, the military. I mean, you name it. It's ideal. As far as damage prevention, there are so many different utility lines that are in a street nowadays. There's hardly any room left in a lot of our cities to put any type of line, whether it's a fiber optic line or a 42-inch water main. The room is just becoming non-existent. So it's even more important at this point in time for us to know where those lines are. A lot of times our fiber optic lines and communication lines are tied with our duct banks for power and communications. If you know where the power is, you may know where the communication line is. If you know where the communication line is, it might help you figure out that there's a power line right next door. And that all comes down to safety of the worker in the field, safety of the excavator, safety of the people around it. So I'd say it's extremely important as far as damage prevention is concerned, not to mention the cost and the downtime for all the businesses. So, I mean, I can go on for an hour if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, there are some fundamental responsibilities for damage prevention. Our list is underground facility operators must belong to their respective one call center. We want no exceptions to that requirement. We want the underground facility operators to ensure that the facilities are located and marked accurately, so that our guys in the field can go out there and work safely and productively and make sure that we're not damaging anything and that none of our employees are getting hurt themselves. As excavators, we have to call 811 before we dig. We need to respect the markings, and we need to dig carefully by potholing during the excavation, again, for our own safety and the safety of the facilities themselves. Any exceptions to this process is compromising safety. So we want the state enforcement authorities to do their job and fully enforce the state damage prevention laws. And that way, everybody can maintain the services that they own. We can work around them safely, and it's better for everybody. It's money much better spent for the operators to know where their facilities are and to mark them accurately. And that way we can work more productively, and there'll be less downtime and much greater safety for everybody.
You know, Tom, you mentioned there the exemptions of responsibilities in this process. It only compromises safety. It's so true. If we start letting exemptions come across and have operators get away with not performing the way that the law requires them to perform, it encourages so-called cheating or trying to get away with not doing what they're supposed to do every time. You never know when that one time is going to be the time that an issue is going to happen or occur. We can't let people skirt the system. If they're doing things wrong, they need to do it right. It's that simple, and we need to enforce that. And if we enforce it with menial fines, penal fines that are small, it's just going to encourage them to cheat the system more. That's all there is to it. So I think we need to stop that. And I agree with you when you said that the exemptions only compromise the process.
Absolutely.
And I guess I would just end with saying that those are great perspectives from two contractors, but looking at it from a national perspective at broadband deployment, if this situation doesn't improve, you're going to effectively slow the deployment of broadband. The more problems we have because of mislocates and non-locates and lack of communication in this process, inevitably you're going to slow down broadband projects. Am I right, guys?
Absolutely. I mean, then you will find the money going to the unproven technologies because they're going to do more R&D, because our system won't be as reliable as what it should be if things were being done the right way. I mean, just think about it. If an owner becomes unreliable in what they're providing to the public is going to stop utilizing it, and they'll find another way.
That's well said.
Great. Well, in closing, I just want to thank all of our panelists for everything they've done and for their input. NUCA, our motto is "We Dig America," and two of our core principles are we promote innovative technology and we advocate for the rebuilding of our nation's infrastructure. And broadband is definitely that, and we need to put as much emphasis into securing infrastructure in the future. And thank you for your time, gentlemen. We greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.